Welcome to another video about the WEBCON Way. This one is all about multi-page forms.
Let's say you've got a workflow process, and at one point or another, you're going to fill out a form to supply a lot of information. And the thing about this form is, it could be pretty darned busy. Even if I made this pretty, it would still be really busy and confusing to the user. It might be a lot nicer to show the user something like this. Let's start with a nice friendly page where you fill in information about yourself. We'll guide you through the whole thing. Tell us about when you want your meeting to take place and what the furniture should be arranged like, and do you want coffee or lunch, and if you want lunch, what kind of food do you want to serve, and what are your audiovisual needs. And when we're all done, we click submit and we're good. There are different ways to achieve this effect. The way a lot of people would do this is, here's my form, I'll throw a bunch of controls on individual panels, I'll make the panels all appear in the same place, and I'll hide all of them except for one. And then when I've done that, when I click on a button, there comes some script behind there that hides some things and shows other things. And then when I click on one button or another, the same thing keeps happening. And look, I'm not saying this won't work. I'm saying this is incredibly difficult to maintain. You really don't want to do this. You make any change, it's really going to be difficult. And we know that applications change. So if you move to an application design environment that does understand multiple screens or multiple views or multiple pages, great. I don't need to worry about hiding and revealing. I just need to navigate. But when you think about it, if I have to throw code behind every single button, and yes, I'm thinking of a formula as code in this case, I'm going to have a whole bunch of formulas or scripts or code or so on, and I still need to keep track of this. And if I rearrange the pages, I'm going to not have a good time. This is still pretty hard to maintain, and I still really don't want to do this either. Now, I could use the approach a couple of products take, which is, yes, we'll have multiple pages or multiple screens, and instead of a lot of scripts or embedded formulas and buttons, there's a lookup table that says, look, if you're on page 4 and someone clicks next, go to page 5, or if they click previous, go to page 3. And maybe we have some extra conditions in here that check to see if certain things are met and maybe go to one page versus the other page. Well, I'm not saying this doesn't work. I am saying, however, that this is pretty non-standard if you think in terms of workflow. Basically, I have this doing one kind of logic and this workflow diagram doing another kind of logic. And if I'm trying to figure out how the application works, and most importantly, how to make a change to it sometime, I don't know whether I need to check here or here, and I need to keep coordinating between them all the time. I don't really like this either. This is not the way I want to build an application. I would like to build an application with multi-page forms the WEBCON way. Let's check it out. Here we are in a WEBCON application for meeting room management. And if we create a new request, you'll see here's my name, a place to put the beginning and end dates, and the capacity I'm going to need, and what kind of refreshments are involved, and what kind of room setup I need. All right, this is well and good, except that, again, we can do better. We can turn this into a multi-page form, and let's do that. So here we have this step, begin request. What you just saw was the form for this. Later on, it gets assigned to somebody, and they review and figure out which room we're going to get, and we check and see whether or not we're happy with that. I'm focused here. And what we're going to do is turn this from a single page to multiple pages, but we're going to let the workflow do all the work. Let's add a second page here. And in this second page, we provide details about lunch. And in another step, let's make a little room here. And we go ahead and the furniture layout. describe room layout. It'll be a 3-page form, here to here to here, and we're not going to submit it until we get to the very, very end. Let's get this arrow out of the way. The action is going to happen here, and what I'm going to do is draw a line from begin request to provide lunch details, and instead of calling this new path, let's call this next, because by default these arrows will become buttons on the form. Remember, the workflow tells the form what to do. It makes life so much easier. There's next and next, and yes, obviously that implies previous and previous, right? So let's create a previous path. We'll go from here back to here. And again, instead of new path, let's call this previous. And I need to do this once more. From there to there. Great. So far, so good. All right. That's the basic flow. Here's what I would like to do. I need to make sure that this is not one task and that's another task and that's another task. I don't want to keep closing the form, assigning someone a new alert. They click on the notification, open up a new task. That's no fun. It's really easy to handle that. There are two key factors here. One is the first request is being handled by the current user. When they click next, we also want it to go to the current user. And if the task recipient is identical, so in other words, if this person and this person are the same person, that's criterion number one. The second thing we need to do is come over here to parameters and click wizard mode. Wizard mode means if it's the same person for both steps, just advance to the next page. You don't need to do anything else. Let's do this one more time. Let's open up this next. And I'm also going to turn on wizard mode and not bother with a confirmation pop-up. I will also ensure that this is assigned to the current user. For the previous task, if I need to go back, I still want to be in wizard mode, and I don't want to show a confirmation message. And I do want to make sure that this is assigned to the same user. But I want to do one other thing. If we're going backwards, I may not have finished the form, so I don't want it to get validated. If there was a required field and I didn't fill it in, remember I'm going backwards. I don't need to validate that form. All right, let's also do this here. Wizard mode, don't show confirmation, don't validate, and of course, make sure that this form is assigned to the current user. There, we are done. Let's save this process. Done. And remember, at the end, we're going to see a button marked Submit. Now, remember, we see a path called Next in the first step. In the second step, we see one path called Next, another one called Previous. In the third step, we see a button called Submit and another button called Previous. But I do need to make the form a little bit more clever. Remember how everyone else does scripts or formulas or something like that? Here's my basic layout. I've got some stuff happening on the right, some stuff happening on the left, not much happening on the top or bottom. Let's go over here to the field matrix. These are the steps in the process along the top, and all the fields and sections and such appear along the side. When I'm beginning my request, I don't want to see details about lunch, like when lunch should be served and lunch menu options. I want that to happen later. I also don't want to see anything about the current room. I do want to know who the organizer is and when this is supposed to take place and whether they want coffee or want lunch. When we want lunch details, I don't want to see any of this stuff. In fact, the only things I want to see are what time lunch should be served and what kind of menu should be involved. And when we get to describing the room layout, again, it would be good to remind people of capacity. So I'm going to show that field, but I'm going to keep it read only. Down here under room setup, I'm going to require that someone provide or choose a layout. And then as it's being reviewed, everybody sees everything, but it's in read-only mode. Okay, now let's save the process. Now let's go back. By virtue of that little mapping thing, if I reload this, check it out. I have a really small, simple form with an initial page. So let's say the meeting starts at 9 a.m. and let's have it finish the same day, but it'll be capacity 50 people. I do want coffee, tea, and water, and I do want lunch. Click next. Lunch details. How about we have that happen right at noon? Instead of AM, let's make that PM. And let's make it a buffet. It's 50 people. Might be more cost effective that way. So let's click next. All right. Room setup. I would like it to be classroom style. And I submit. And I'm done. It's gone over to the building manager and they'll deal with it. So there was a multi-page form with zero real effort on our part. All I did was create the pages as workflow steps. And then I did this matchmaking right here that said, at this step in the workflow, show these fields. At this step in the workflow, show these fields or entire sections or such. It's about the easiest way to do it. And I'm managing the entire application, the data, the form layout, and the workflow process from one single environment. This is great. Now you might be wondering why I created this much space. It's because I waited for something. There's no way I want begin request to go straight to provide lunch details. I only want that to happen if they checked the checkbox that says we want to provide lunch. So let's throw in a branching condition. And here in branching land, when you click next, this will be a test. Do we want lunch? And if we want lunch, then we provide lunch details. And let's call this get lunch details. And here we'll go straight to describing the room layout. And we'll call this path no lunch needed. We do need to indicate how we will figure out which path is which. So we'll use the expression editor and we'll do a little if then. So if we had a form field in refreshments called lunch, if lunch, I think I can just leave it as if lunch, but let's be nice and explicit in case somebody looks at this. If lunch is positive, then we're going to choose this formula called path. And we specified two paths out of this. So if we do want lunch, get lunch details. If we don't want lunch, no lunch needed. Okay, hit close, save the process. And now, if I click this and I provide, I can get fancier about that, but I'll do it later. It was 11:26. Let's have it be a very long meeting, and we'll have this be 20 people. I will serve coffee, but not lunch, and I'll click next, and we go straight to the room setup. And if I hit previous and come back here, look, the previous thing brings me to the lunch menu. I should have thought this through a little bit better. If I'm describing the room layout and I click previous and I didn't want lunch, I've got two choices here. I can either add another branching check here and jump back to provide lunch details or go all the way back to begin request.
Or we can use one of my favorite unsung features. Let's edit this path named previous. We're going to change its destination from going back to an explicitly named step to this, back to the previous step. This will interrogate the current state of the workflow and just go literally to the previous step. So it could take you back to provide lunch details, could take you back through lunch all the way back to begin request. We'll just do the right thing. Let's save it.
So now if I click previous, I only want coffee. I click next. I choose the layout. Nope, I want to go backwards. I'm back all the way. If now I click lunch, I'm asked to provide details. That's it, gang. It was that easy. I'm controlling the form from the workflow. The lines are blurred, but this is a workflow solution. They really should be blurred. Here we move it through different steps in order to figure out what's supposed to be filled out, and you won't see this page if you aren't supposed to see this page. Once we're done, this winds up being dropped off at someone else's desk, and they are supposed to check it out. So if we take a look here at available applications, I have a new task, and here it is. Here are the scheduling details, the refreshment details, and the layout. Now, if I didn't want to see all of this on one page, I've got a couple of choices. I probably don't want a wizard here. What I could do instead is show these different sections in different tabs. But that would be a topic for another video.
Thank you very much for watching this. And if you'd like to know more, check out www.webcon.com.